what could trigger a buy-sell.
Funding the buy-sell agreement is the most important part.
Everything Matt wanted for his family didn't turn out because of his failure to plan.
Or maybe he didn't think it was necessary, it was coming up. I'll be bringing each week a different guest with all the answers that you have the questions for. And this way you can come back to my podcast for any questions that come to your mind, and you can focus just on working as everything else this podcast will provide you. Hi, welcome to Simple Wealth Wisdom Podcast. I'm your host, Sim Gakhar. My work helping successful business owners and professionals like you build and maintain your lifestyle and legacy exposes me to so many very interesting specialists in tax side, accounting, law, estates, and investment side. In this podcast, I share those people with you and your team so you can hear directly from them. So if you're a successful business owner or self-employed professional, stay tuned for a lot of business building value. Today, I'm very excited to have Anna from RBC as my guest. Welcome, Anna.
Thanks, Sim. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much for coming. I'm really excited for my audience to hear from you. Anna is a senior sales consultant for life for RBC Insurance. She's been in the financial services space for over 15 years, always having gravitated towards the estate planning process, risk management, and helping families and businesses preserve their wealth. She's a great friend with whom I love spending time over various industry events. And today, I'm so excited that she's in my office on my podcast to answer the questions that you, my business owners and self-employed professional clients want to know. So once again, very welcome to my podcast, Anna.
Thank you, Sim.
Anna, let's begin with business owners who are partners. A lot of business owners, they start the business together. Two friends, brothers, families, they come together and start the business. So why is having a buy-sell agreement so important for a business owner? If two friends have started a business, they've just started or they've been in the business for a long time, something happens to one of them, whether their partners want to work with them or not. So there has to be an agreement. They normally build that. That's a part of their business agreement. So what do you say about that? I would like you to tell my viewers that a lot of them are in partnership, but they don't have much knowledge about buy-sell. So let me hear it from you.
I love the way you structure that, Sim, because there really is this human element when it comes to forming a business partnership. It's not just about the business, it's about the relationship. Often those who we go into business with, or maybe over time, they become like a second family. So when we think about what could trigger a buy-sell, for example, let's face it, a departure, to phrase it nicely, or a disability, these are two of the toughest things someone could go through for a business partner and who you leave behind.
Right.
A buy-sell agreement doesn't just focus on the needs of the business to make sure it continues smoothly in the case the worst should happen, but also it protects those we leave behind. Usually we care about those we go into business with. We want the best for the family that they leave behind, while also making sure we maintain the financial health of the company as well.
Right.
So there's a lot to consider there. We care about the people that we work with. We care about their families as well. However, at the same time, we might love our business partner's spouse, but we might not necessarily want them to become our new business partner.
Partners, yes.
So a buy-sell agreement will make sure that the transition of those shares will be smooth, while also looking out for and protecting those that we leave behind.
Definitely. That's a great answer you've given, that importance of buy-sell agreement. But just having a buy-sell agreement is one thing. At the time of the need, funding the buy-sell agreement is the most important part. Where does the money come from?
Absolutely.
And then on top of that, I want you to talk about what can they do using life insurance for the same. So let's hear it from you.
Absolutely. The funding part truly is crucial. And when we look at the different ways, you could say, okay, this is how I'm going to either purchase the shares from the deceased estate or maybe redeem the shares. How do I do so? We often look at something like a sinking fund, or perhaps taking out a loan, or perhaps it's structuring out a payout over different years. And then we'll get into the fourth reason, which is life insurance, or rather I should say the fourth way, which is the most efficient. And when we juxtapose that between the other three, we'll see why it's so important to fund with life insurance. So first, a business owner might say, oh, we'll just set up a sinking fund. So we'll just save for the money, and if the worst should happen to each other, we have that money there.
Right.
Now, Sim, you've worked with enough business owners.
Yeah.
How viable do you think that is?
No, I don't think so. A sinking fund wouldn't last that long, number one. And you never know, the need might come anytime. Has the fund grown? So I don't think sinking fund is that good of an alternative for that. But let's go to the second one.
Yeah, exactly. Most business owners like to deploy their assets in a way that's good for the business. So it might be a little bit pie in the sky to think that they're just going to save up the sinking fund. The next might be, well, we could just go to a bank and take out a loan. Things aren't so simple. Let's say the partner who is deceased was a key person in that business and they're responsible for so much growth and revenue. It might be really tough at that point to get a loan from the bank.
Yeah, because maybe he was the main person due to which the business was running, or maybe he was the one who had the main goodwill in the business.
Absolutely.
And then they might not get. Good point, very good point. Yeah.
And even if you do secure the loan, now your business has a loan to service, and that's not ideal either.
Yeah.
The remaining shareholders might not want this new loan to service at the same time.
Right.
Then you might say, okay, well, I could structure a payout for these shares to buy out the value of the shares or redeem the value of the shares. Now, a lot could go wrong there as well. Of course, every business owner might say, over the next 10 years, my corporate profits will be X amount, and then I'll take away, this amount to buy it out. Now, do things always happen exactly as a business owner plans for them?
Of course. That's why they're the business owners.
Yes. It just leaves too much to risk to say, I'm going to take this from my corporate profits over a certain amount of time. And then you're also burdening the business with this payout over a certain amount of time.
Right.
But there's a better way, Sim.
And that's what I wanted to talk about.
Absolutely.
That's what my viewers have to know.
Definitely. And the better way, truthfully, is the life insurance. It is often the most cost-efficient way for the buy-sell agreement to fund it. It's there when you need it. It's liquidity when you need it the most.
Yeah.
You could rely on it. And it's just the most optimal way to get that liquidity at exactly the right time that a business owner needs it.
Absolutely. And when you said the right time, that sounds so right, because you never know.
Yes.
When do you need it? You never know. The time could be tomorrow. Time could be 20 years from now. But when you have a life insurance attached to it, it's attached to your life.
Absolutely.
And it's there for life. Thank you so much for sharing that. So let's say this important person in your business is not a shareholder. Okay? There's one thing that the shareholders are together. And what if the person is not a shareholder? How do we protect a business from losing someone who brings in profits if something were to happen to them?
Great question. So oftentimes we do have that key person in the business that drives results, that drives revenues, that drives relationships, but they might not necessarily be a shareholder.
Right.
However, they're a key person, and for that there is an insurance solution, and we call it key person insurance. Mm-hmm. So let's say you and I own a software development company.
Perfect.
And we have an employee who is the software architect for our number one product that generates most of our profits.
Wonderful.
You would say this person is crucial to our business.
Key person.
Absolutely. If the worst were to happen to them, the business would suffer.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
It takes capital to attract a new person, to attract good talent to replace that person. Mm-hmm. Because viably, we will need to replace that person.
Yeah.
Where will we get the funding to attract a new person who is at the same caliber as the person that we lost? Mm-hmm. Key person insurance, once again, it gives us that liquidity back into the business so that the business could keep going and it doesn't impact its financial health. We could hire in the right people. We can bring in the right talent so that our business still goes smoothly.
This is so right. This is so right. And that's where most of the business owners feel that it's very easy. They don't realize that when the main person is not there, the business might not run the same way. But if there is funds available, something comes from the life insurance and they can get, rather than going into a fire sale of the things or getting into a loan, and insurance same way can provide liquidity in the business for them to hire the new talent to continuity of the business, right?
Absolutely. It's a safety net.
A safety net, absolutely. So what about in a business owner's family when there's different needs to be met?
This is a great question as well. It goes back to those relationships we have in our lives and what happens if the worst should happen. So let's say in an example of a blended family.
Yeah.
So you have, let's say, your adult children who you'd want to look after one day if you weren't here, and you also have a spouse who you'd want to look after.
Right.
Now, when it comes to putting your estate plan together, truly, like the old adage says, if you fail to plan,
you plan to fail.
Absolutely. So oftentimes we'll work with those that say, well, this is my intention. You know, I want to leave this behind to my spouse. I want to leave this behind to my adult children. But intention does not equal a plan.
Yes.
So let's say we have this couple, let's call them Matt and Brenda. Matt has 2 adult children from a previous marriage. He's married to Brenda, and he thinks, you know what, if something were to happen to me, I would want to divide up everything I've worked for in an equitable way between the 3 people I care about most.
Right.
However, let's say Matt didn't do any planning to ensure things go as they do. So Matt and Brenda, they have their home, maybe they have a cottage or recreational property, and Matt's a business owner as well.
Right.
However, let's say he didn't plan for what he would like to see happens next.
Right.
So he has his property, joint tenants with right of survivorship with Brenda.
Right.
Turns out that's the same way the cottage is set up, which is pretty standard between couples.
Yeah.
It happens the most often. And it is, his accountant has said, you know, Matt, the shares of your small business, it just makes the most sense to do a rollover
To the spouse.
if you should die to the spouse. Absolutely. When it came time to open up their RSPs together, they put each other as the beneficiary, as we often see happen.
Yeah.
Now, Matt's intention is to leave everything he's worked for behind equitably to everyone. But once again, he didn't put that plan in place. So let's say the worst thing happens to Matt. His home will roll over and only Brenda will own that.
Yeah.
The cottage, same thing. It's joint tenants with right of survivorship. If he should go, Brenda has full ownership.
Yeah.
The registered plans, she's the
Spousal
named beneficiary.
rollover.
Absolutely. The shares of the business,
Spousal rollover.
what's left behind for the 2 adult children that he wanted to treat equitably?
Nothing.
Nothing or next to nothing left in the estate. So everything Matt wanted for his family didn't turn out because of his failure to plan. Now, at this point, different planning could have been put in place. So for example, let's say the properties they did joint tenants in common, that when he passes, that his ownership rolls over to his kids.
Yeah, he could have done those beneficiaries separately. There he could have said if she died, you know, her share, it doesn't automatically roll over to the surviving partner. They can choose the beneficiary. But because, as you said, they didn't plan, so everything automatically went to Brenda.
Yes.
Yeah.
However, at the same time, this might not be ideal either. So maybe his adult kids don't want to own property along with Brenda. Now, you could even employ a trust maybe so that Brenda uses the properties until she should pass. But that is a large gap in between. It could be decades between Matt's death and Brenda's death, where that joint ownership with the kids and maybe using a trust isn't ideal.
Right.
Now, when it comes to tax and optimization, rollovers aren't necessarily a bad idea. And someone might say it's the most tax efficient to have these rollovers happen.
Yeah.
But it doesn't fulfill Matt's wish of wanting to treat those he leaves behind equitably. There's an incredible tool, though, that we can use so that he takes advantage of these tax optimizations with the rollovers and still leaves what he wants behind to his beneficiaries. And that's life insurance.
That's life insurance. So the whole story in the end had a very, very simple answer, was the right planning.
Yes.
Because they did not plan, even if he thought something in his mind and he didn't do it, maybe he didn't have the time to do it, or maybe he didn't think it was necessary, it was coming up, But if there was a life insurance policy with the named beneficiaries as the kids, even if Brenda was getting everything and the equal amount was the life insurance, kids would have got it too. So in the end, it's all about the planning.
100%. Life insurance is such an incredible equalization tool. And if Matt worked with a professional such as yourself, he could find ways where he still takes advantage of all these tax optimizations with the rollovers, but still leaves behind exactly what he wants to his other beneficiaries in this efficient way, in a liquid way that pays out tax-free. And everything he desired for when he leaves happens exactly as he wanted it.
And this is not only, Anna, in the case that there were kids from the last marriage. This could be even in your present marriage, even if the kids belong to both parents.
Absolutely.
Even if it's in your present marriage, you both have been married for 30, 40 years and you have kids, still, if you want to leave money for your kids, or if one child is, not that well financially settled or disabled, or that child needs more money and more care, life insurance can be a very good tool to plan for that. So now we're talking about a corporately owned policy where she will get the shares. Is there any way he can take care in that corporately owned policy for those kids? This is a confusing question for a lot of people, and they don't understand that I want you to talk something about CDA, how it can only be passed to the wife, but otherwise how this can be done by the remaining surviving shareholders.
Okay, so ideally a business owner will have their will planning done. They've spoken to their lawyer. It's fleshed out. They have named who their heirs will be and who will inherit the shares.
Right.
Now, for tax optimization, using those tax preferred dollars through the corporation owns the policy, they're a payer of the policy, and they are a beneficiary of that policy.
Absolutely, yeah.
That business owner absolutely has to have their heirs set. Ideally, they're in their will.
Yeah.
Because once they inherit the shares, as a shareholder, they're able to declare a capital dividend. And by declaring this tax-free capital dividend, they could flow money out from the corporation into the hands of the heirs in a tax-free way. So that business owner declaring who their heir is, having it written down, having that contingency plan, the lawyer knows what's happening next, it's in the will, the heirs know what's happening next. They know that now they're the shareholder, they could declare that capital dividend, and they could siphon out tax-free money from the corporation through the CDA.
Very good. So will is very important.
Yes.
Very important. And it should be reviewed very regularly.
Absolutely.
As your business grows, as your portfolio grows, as you grow, the great idea is to always review your bill. So now, what are the most common mistakes business owners make?
Oof, where do we get started? To tie in with the theme, truly, it's that lack of planning. It's having the intention in mind, but an intention is not a plan. Only action leads us to a plan.
Yes, rightly said.
Absolutely. It's starting to work with a professional like yourself, Sim. It's that collaboration, working with their accountants, working with their lawyers. And it starts with those simple questions. What would you like to happen next?
Yes.
Who do you want to take care of? What would you like to see for your family? What would you like to see for your business? Does your family want to be involved with your business? Or what happens to your business partner? It starts with the questions and then having that dialogue after, and the right professionals like yourself put in the right plan so that we could execute on what their wishes are. So planning is key. Next, it's what you mentioned earlier. It's that regular review.
Yeah.
Who you were and what you had 20 years ago is going to be very different than today.
Very different, yeah. In fact, yesterday only I was with a client. I did the policy for her maybe around 10 years ago. And we were doing the policy review. And I was doing the conversion for her, actually. And then I asked her, I said, how come now you have a different partner now, and we still have this beneficiary? You just told me that since 7 years, you are with a different partner. Do you still want him to be your partner? The old one, she said, oh my God, I forgot.
Yes.
So just think about that people normally forget to change even their it was a life insurance policy, personally owned policy for my client. And then we immediately changed the beneficiary. So think about that. If you don't look at your will regularly, will that you made 20 years ago, you used to live in a smaller house, you only had one company, you only had that old partner, you only had one kid, or maybe you were with different life partner. There's so many things changed. So reviewing the will is very, very important.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the mistake, because when business owners, I feel that when the business is growing, they're so involved in their business that they think that we'll do it tomorrow. We'll do it tomorrow. But they're busy growing their business. So
yes.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I love that. So Anna, not everybody is well established. It takes time to build the business, right? A lot of people think in the beginning stages that it's too early. I'm not even making that kind of money that I would worry about. Do you have any suggestions for those starting in the business? What do you think about that? If somebody's just starting in the business, whether they're starting on their own or they're starting in the partnership, what do you suggest?
That planning is still key, because it's not just where you are today, it's where you want to be. It's where you see yourself. You start a business, you're in it for the long haul, you see yourself in it for decades. Plan with that end in mind. Maybe you're not fully established today, but you're putting your whole heart into this 10, 20, 30 years from now. You want to see this business grow. However, when it comes to such a key part of planning, for example, life insurance, we don't necessarily know where our health will be 10 or 20 years from now. It would be very prudent now, kind of the youngest and maybe even the healthiest you'll ever be, to secure that coverage today, knowing that will become more and more important as time goes on, and having that peace of mind that you've put that fundamental planning in place. Perhaps they've worked with someone like you to build in options so that that coverage grows as their business grows, as their family grows. But putting it in today where it's the youngest someone will ever be while they have their good health is fundamental.
So today you are healthiest, today you are youngest.
Yes. Yes.
But if my business owner client says, that's fine, I'm youngest today, I'm healthiest today, but my business is not in the stage to afford insurance right now. I can't afford to pay something which will generate cash value. What do you suggest then?
Yes. You could always start with something like a term policy.
Thank you.
Yeah, yes. Put that coverage in place, put that protection umbrella over you, over your business, over your family, and knowing that a strong contract will have those conversion options so that you have the ability for that coverage to grow with you as your business grows.
Yeah, so when your business grows, you start more money, you can start converting. You don't have to convert the whole thing at once. You can do partial conversions, and as you grow, the policy grows, and you'll have permanent coverage. You started with the term, but you will have a permanent coverage. Wonderful, wonderful. I love that. So that was a suggestion for somebody new in the business. What is the suggestion for those who've been in the business for many years and are now planning for succession?
This is a hot topic, especially because usually when we think of our successors, most often in Canada, it is our family members. So there's an emotional component as well. We want to set up, our children for success. We want to set up the next generation for success. And here is where that liquidity, having assets come into place, will be important. So during that transition, there will be taxation that will take away from the overall value of the business. We don't want to leave the next generation in a position where they're starting further behind.
Right.
If anything, we want them to start further ahead with the tools they need, with the resources they need. Here is where insurance could really play in to give, once again, that liquidity they need, to give them those assets that they need for a strong start into the business.
Very well said. Anna, with your experience, so much experience you have, you don't look that old, but you've got very good experience.
Thank you,
do you see a lot of policies that insurance carriers have where there's no beneficiary named?
Yes, I do. Or it's an outdated beneficiary.
Outdated beneficiary.
Yes, that's more likely the case because the carrier will always need you to have some beneficiary there, but oftentimes at the time of application, they just put estate, for example.
Right.
Or perhaps a previous spouse that might not be in the picture anymore. Or they have a child, but they've had other children since.
Right.
And it's no longer up to date. But usually if you haven't checked in, if you haven't done that planning, if you haven't worked with your professional to make sure everything's up to date, it is too late once you find out that the wrong beneficiary was named. And that's why that planning, that touching base with your professional, with you, goes such a long way.
That's very right, because I know that I deal with so many clients who got the policies from somebody else many, many years ago, and now they don't even know. So this is something very important piece of that as well. And just, I know we're going to again run out of time, but I want to ask this question very quickly. If you can just share with my viewers that claim process, if somebody has a corporately owned policy or somebody has a personally owned policy, is there any difference in the claim at the time of the claim?
I haven't seen a different form between the two different kinds of ownership. If someone has passed away, it's the same claim form either way. So no, I personally haven't seen a difference.
So claim is always the same. A lot of times people come and ask, no, they wouldn't pay me because I have personally owned policy. So that's not true. You can have a personally owned policy, corporately owned policy. Corporation is a different entity. The reason is different for that. So even if you own a personally owned policy, Anna confirms you can have a corporately owned policy if you have a corporation, right?
Yes.
Yes. That's wonderful. So that was very, very good knowledge. Anna, thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate you coming and sharing all your knowledge with my viewers. And once again, thank you so much.
My pleasure, Sim.
Thank you. And that was another episode of Simple Wealth Wisdom Podcast. Please let us know in the comments what you like the most about this podcast. And if there's anything else you want to see or ask, I'll make sure to bring that to you in our future podcast. Watch for us again. Until next time, stay safe. I'm Sim Gakhar. Thank you.